Welcome back, everyone, to Vikings Playbook. Here for another episode. And again, your Sunday always starts here. We got great guests every week on Saturdays. And my guest today is no other than Kyle Joudry. Follow Kyle on social media. You've seen him on here before. He's an editor for purpleptsd.com and vikingsterritory.com. On X, at Vikings Gazette is where you can follow him on social media. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Kyle Joudry. Kyle, how are we doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm getting by. You're doing okay?
Doing great. And, you know, not only can they follow what you're writing on Vikings territory and Purple PTSD, there's a lot of other great writers out there too. So make sure that you're following us, purpleptsd.com, Vikings News Daily. Go ahead and you check it out. Make sure that you're staying up to date on all your Vikings news. Now, Kyle, you were just at Vikings Minicamp, and I'm sure that that was one heck of an experience for you. And we're going to get into that. But I just want to mention that you've been writing for Purple PTSD for how long? In Vikings
Five,
territory? How long have you been doing this?
5 or so years. Yeah, something like that. 5, 6 years. Yeah.
And then is there anything else that any other socials you want to put out there, or anything else that you want to bring to any of the followers that maybe have never seen you on either this show or have read anything that you're writing? Is there anything you got going on, or socials, or any links you want to throw out?
No, I feel like that's basically. I mean, I've done stuff in the past, but at this point, it's VT, it's PTSD, and Twitter. And so, if yeah, if people are interested in that, they can check it out. And if not, then that's fine too.
And how did you get into writing? Like what made, because you live up in Canada, right?
Yep. Yeah,
So
I'm Canadian.
what made you a Vikings fan?
Yeah, so I started. So this would have been way back when I started following the Vikings with Jared Allen and Kevin Pat Williams and that whole thing. And so followed them for a bit, cheered for them for a long time, and that's kind of what really spurred this idea of kind of doing some writing on the side. And so did so. And then at this stage, the funny thing is when I began, just basically so kind of passionate about the Vikings, kind of riding the high, wins and losses and that kind of thing. Um, the funny thing is that kind of this has become a full-time job now, and I've been doing it for a long time. It's really not what it used to be. I'm still a sports fan, and I have favorite teams in other sports, and I'm still a football fan. I appreciate the sport. I coach football locally, and enjoy the sport itself, but it's certainly my relationship to the team has changed for sure. And so it's not the same as what it once was, but um, I would say that I enjoy the job. I think the job's it's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
Now, I also want to welcome, we got a lot of followers that are out there. If you guys have a question for either myself or Kyle during the stream, make sure that you go ahead and shout it out in comments on X or YouTube. And then, as you guys know, we're getting close. I think we have like 80, 85 more followers yet to go. And you can have a chance by being a follower on YouTube at Vikes Playbook. Once we get to 250, we're going to give away a Jordan Addison. Yes, that's a Winter Warrior Jordan Addison autographed jersey. So you can win that just by being a subscriber. And once we get to 250, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, I guess, raffle it away to one of you lucky subscribers. So make sure that you're doing that. And then, of course, we do have a card break tonight. So we'll be doing another one of those towards the end of the podcast. We've had a couple winners already. To where if you end up winning, you will end up getting this one of one metallic leaf metal eclectic signature series football card. So we'll be doing another one of those today. So make sure that you stay tuned to the end of the podcast, and we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to win. All right, Kyle, we're going to jump into our first topic. Talked about that you were at minicamp. So what's your observations that you saw at minicamp? You and the other press beat writers were there. How many days were you at minicamp? And then just initially, what stood out to you at minicamp?
Yeah. So I was in the Twin Cities for better part of a week, and I caught the flag tournament They had the girls' state championship on that Monday, and so I was able to swing over to TCO Stadium for that. And then minicamp was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so I was able to watch that as well. I will say, I think the team is very genuine in its belief in where they can go. I know that right now, I think I don't stay super on top of Vegas, but I think I've seen some suggesting that they're kind of like a 9-8 team or 8-9 or something to that effect, which is fine. I mean, Vegas can do what they want, obviously, but I think there legitimately is quite a bit of optimism from O'Connell, from Flores, from Wes Phillips. Wes Phillips tends to be a little more restrained, but charming in his own way. And so I would say there's a good deal of belief about where this thing is rolling. What that means in the end, I guess, remains to be seen. But that would be kind of one of the first takeaways, is they do actually feel like they're building something.
Two-Tone is already at it. I mean, that's the hot topic question, right? So
Yeah.
from what you've been seeing, Two-Tone wants to know, who do you think is going to be the starting quarterback? Now, we know the battle has been out there. It's been talked about where Kyler Murray had, and you probably saw some of this, some of the struggles that he had with trying to learn this offense. He did have one practice where he threw 2 consecutive interceptions. He's talked about maybe some of the issues with having to split reps with JJ McCarthy, and just what are you seeing in those practices, and what's your takeaway as far as first what that quarterback competition looks to be from the outside looking in, what I'm reading, and just what I'm hearing from minicamp. It kind of sounds like JJ McCarthy is actually performing better, at least in the minicamp. But
Yeah.
Kyler Murray has not had the opportunity to use his legs. We'll see more of that in training camp. But at least at this point, what's your takeaway in minicamp, and what do you think is going to happen going to training camp with Two-Tone's question?
So I mean, we were just talking about Vegas and odds and all this stuff. The favorite probably is still Kyler Murray. But if you only had those 3 days to work off of, if you had no kind of preconceived idea of, who was probably going to win, you would probably think that JJ McCarthy did better. I thought JJ McCarthy had a better overall set of 3 days. I'm not a professional football coach. When I did play ball, I didn't play quarterback. So back in junior ball, before I was on the senior team, and we needed a quarterback, they tried me for like 10 minutes and they sent me back to defense, right? So it wasn't good. What I will say is I just felt that I know that the interception thing got a lot of play, and that's fine. Obviously, you shouldn't throw interceptions, but I actually thought that just McCarthy in general looked more decisive and at home in the offense. Whereas I thought that at times Murray was just like a little bit slow to kind of see things develop, which again, like, it's okay. Like, he's still reasonably new. It's a very difficult, complex system. And Wes Phillips even said in his presser, like, going back, one of their main takeaways is they put too much on the guys, right? Like and they've been trying to scale it back. This has been an issue for a long time of just the scheme is so meaty, it's so beefy. And the coaches, have even basically publicly said, like, yeah, we just have at times put it too much there, right? So, and then with the whole Kyler thing too, about like sharing reps and so on, like, I don't know. I wouldn't make too much of that. He's splitting the QB1 reps. That is unusual for somebody like him who has been so talented for so long. This is a bit of a side thing, but like he was drafted super high by the Oakland Athletics, like for Major League Baseball, right? Like he's just a sensationally gifted player and a true 2-sport athlete. Could have played pro ball. That was a storyline leading into the NFL draft back in 2019. So I think it's maybe unusual for him to be in a competition. Whereas I think in March, to go back to the original question of who's going to win it, in March, a lot of people seem to think that this is a coronation rather than a competition, that the crown had been put on Kyler's head, and yeah, they'll pay lip service to this whole competition business, but in reality, we know who the king is going to be. I don't actually think that's how they view it. I really do feel like it's an actual competition, and it's closer now than it probably was in March. And so for McCarthy, who's 23, Kyler, I think, is coming up in 29 here in a matter of days. So you're talking about roughly 6 years separate these two gentlemen. Both are sensational athletes. Both are really talented. Both have flaws at the same time. But what I'm trying to suggest is that McCarthy, I think, has already shrunk the gap a little bit. And so if McCarthy obviously is trying to be the starter, he's really got to take 2 and 3 steps for every step that Kyler takes. Kyler's going to take steps in the offseason. I did actually ask him at his presser, how do you plan to spend the summer? Like, do you get away with family, or do you vacation? Like, it's because once you're at training camp, like the NFL's basically got you until February if you go all the way. They've got you from July until Super Bowl if you can get that far. And he basically said no. Like, I don't plan to get away. Like, this is time to work. This is improve. I'm going to come back. I'm going to work with some of the guys. So he's going to put in work, and I expect McCarthy will as well. So my long-winded answer would be it's probably still leaning towards Kyler. But I think McCarthy has already closed the gap a little bit. And really, I think McCarthy's, it's 2 or 3 steps for every step that Kyler takes. And if that's the case, then we'll see.
And I think it'll be interesting too. Like I said, I mean, Kyler hasn't been able to use his legs. I think most of minicamp was a lot of 7-on-7. So you're going to see a lot more 11 versus 11 in training camp. So that changes the game a little bit more. Now, JJ McCarthy is also able to use his legs a little bit. So it's not like Kyler's the only one that can make plays with his legs. JJ McCarthy has shown in 2025 that he's able to do that as well. So we'll have to see how that all plays out in training camp. But some other things that you got to see with some different position battles at camp, whether because you didn't get to see Caleb Banks on the field, you saw probably a lot of for the first teamers. You saw a lot of Levi Drake, Rodriguez, and Redmond. Caleb Banks is on the bike, but who else was filling in there? Was Dominique Orange getting a lot of those first team reps on the defensive line, or did you see anyone else that was really kind of filling in? We saw that pictures, at least, that I noticed of Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins losing quite a bit of weight, looking good. Is he shifted? Was he playing some defensive tackle end, or on the edge, or where do you think he's going? And just what do you see on that defensive line?
Yeah, I think he's a bit of a jumbo edge for Ty Ingram-Dawkins. He does look leaner, but even leaner, he's still like a pretty good size. Because you think like Andrew Van Ginkel, he's like 6'4", 240. Where even Ty Ingram-Dawkins, even a bit slimmer, we're still talking somebody who is 6'5", 270, maybe 275, even a slimmer. Maybe less. I don't actually know. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but he's a bit of a jumbo edge. And I feel like he's probably got a little bit of electricity in his mitts. He's a young lad as well. Can be sturdy in the run, right? And then maybe kick inside a little bit. I think LDR is really good. I think Levi Drake Rodriguez is really good. I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I don't know if Caleb Banks starts in week 1. Just in that he's already missed so much time on the fields. Kevin O'Connell did say at his presser there on Thursday that, had things continued, like if OTAs and minicamp were continuing, if there was some off-season runway to go, like Banks is pretty close, and O'Connell said if this would have kept going, we would have started layering him into Indy and then 11-11 team stuff, right? I don't know if that's just your general O'Connell optimism or what, but they seem to be feeling really good. And then he was saying like stressing him above the neck. Banks, I think, is like he's understanding things well. He's keeping up. Ryan Nielsen, he just appears to be a fantastic coach. Like he just appears to be so good, so specific, so much guidance. I can't pretend to be an expert. I'm not, but I just watching him go to work with these dudes, I'm like, okay, like this coach he's got some energy. He's seen a thing or two. Like I see why people like him. He's definitely got a presence on the field.
I think Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, like back to your question, Norris, was he playing outside? A lot of 7-on-7. So, I mean,
Hmm.
we'll really have to see once we get into training camp, of
Hmm.
course. But I do think that he plays maybe a little bit of edge unless we end up bringing in some people. So we'll
Hmm.
have to see.
Yep.
Brevin Bain, hey, he says, "What's up, fellas? Good to see you,
Hi,
Brev,
Brevin.
showing up."
Yeah. He
But
was he was playing some edge, like in indie
okay.
stuff. He was getting work with edge and stuff, and so now again, like how much do you put into that? Like indie
Hmm.
work in June is not, you know, Lambo in December, right? Like it's a different context,
Yeah.
right? So keep it all within its proper lane and understand that this is in many ways like an experimentation phase. This is the
Hmm.
time to try new things and kind of dabble and see. But yeah, he did get some edge work. Yep.
And what other battles? I hear about Damon Claiborne's speed, and I really
Mm,
think
hmm.
he maybe plays in and he gets some important reps in there with the running
Yep.
back, especially depending on health. Aaron Jones has had
Yeah.
some issues with that, but Damon Claiborne. Any other position battles? Maybe Damon Claiborne working into a punt returner, kick returner. I had wrote about that. I think he may
Hmm.
find a role in there. But what other battles or anything on Damon Claiborne that you noticed at minicamp that you want to talk about that you saw? Maybe, hey, someone's starting to edge in.
Yeah. Uh, I like Jake Olday. He's long. He moves well. I kind of thought it's not really a fair comparison because it's a pretty high standard, but he's he reminds me a little bit of a mix of Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks, just in that he's long like Anthony Barr. He's not as rugged and well built. Barr was pretty sturdy. Kendricks wasn't as long, but he was such an elegant mover on the field. He just was so explosive and obviously put in so much work to read plays and so on. And so I don't know if Goldie can get to their level, but the point is just that he's a really long, rangy guy like Barr, and he
Mm-hmm.
moves very explosively and easily like Kendricks. And I just won't be surprised if he is maybe not technically a starter, but who gets worked into the mix a decent bit. I thought he looked really good. I actually really like Chuck Demings. I know he's a fifth round corner. I know the small school thing, but man, when you see him, and I know it's mini camp and they don't have pads and stuff, but when you
Sure.
see him like nose to nose with the receiver lined up in
Was he
press
covering
man,
ones?
no, he's running with the backups, right?
Okay.
But he just like he looks long, he moves well. Um, like I think he's your CB4. You know, you got James Pierre and Isaiah Rogers and Byron Murphy, but I think he's your CB4, right? Like I think Chuck Demings is a dude. Like I don't know, he's a super charming guy. Like I got to talk to him after the draft, in his like press conference thing. Like he was just super outgoing, super nice, super kind. But on the field, he's feisty. He's long. He's really fast. He looks like a corner. He's pretty fun.
And I'm excited to see how Jacoby Thomas really fits into everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if Theo Jackson, does he take back that safety
Mhm.
spot? Jay Ward, kind of
Mhm.
took it over last year. Jacoby
Yeah.
Thomas, does he fit into that? Norsfia says, and this actually leads into our next topic. He says Elijah looks huge. Now
Yeah.
Elijah Williams, you had an opportunity to
Mhm.
actually take at least a minute or two or a quick
Yep.
little bit of a interview or
Mhm.
some
Yep.
comments from Elijah Williams. How did he look at camp? How do you think he fits into
Mhm.
the inside defensive line? And just some of your takeaways with Elijah Williams.
Yep. No, he's a really nice guy. Um, was able to chat with him for a couple minutes at TCO after practice, and so I just asked him. Like, he said his body's feeling good, and some of it was just general stuff like what are your goals. He's saying he wants to make a more of an impact on the team and this kind of thing. But he did say that he pushed his way up to 305 and wants to. I think previous or I think even now he's listed in high 290s, but
Mm-hmm.
305 is where he's at. I think the goal is what he's telling me is that he wants to stay in that range and kind of be able to kind of soak up blockers a little more on the inside. Um, he was telling me that he feels most comfortable kind of like a three technique. So think shaded on the guard kind of thing. Um, not I'm not trying to compare the two, but I'm saying, think in your mind, think of where Aaron Donald would line up a lot of times, right? Or think like Kevin Williams versus Pat Williams. Kevin Williams would be a little more of a three tech. Um, not to say that he's those players, but just as a general kind of marker for where he would be. He did say that, with Flo, you just kind of have to be ready to move. You just kind of, he's got his own kind of comfort level and this and that, but like he's intentionally building his body in a specific way in order to get moved up and down the line, to soak up blockers, to hopefully take on a larger role. At least that's his ambition, right? And so, and he's a young lad too. He's just a sophomore, right? And has already kind of proven to be pretty resilient, overcome some long odds. Again, it's just if you're writing about the sport, it's hard not to be enthused about an underdog. Like it's hard not to be impressed by somebody who grinds and puts an effort and finds a way to stick around. It's pretty neat. Yeah, pretty
And
neat.
we saw that with Jalen Redmond and his
Yeah.
story. Norris was asking with Brev on there too. Is this a contract year? And yeah, he's a restricted free agent after this year. He signed a 1-year contract. But yeah, Jalen Redmond. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. He had a big year last year. If he continues on that transcendent path, and we possibly could be looking at a monster contract coming up, or at least a big contract for Jalen Redmond if we want to keep him and secure him. But that's going to be an interesting story this season for the Vikings, and whether or not they get to something before the end of the season with Jalen Redmond, or again, we are deep on the inside defensive line. We have Taki Taimani, Elijah Williams that we talked about, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, Dominique Orange, Caleb Banks. So we have names for sure. It's just a matter of again, the Vikings got to kind of take a look at this, and Nolan Teasley, he's going to have to decide, whether or not he wants to pay him, or we just drafted 2 inside defensive linemen. Are you wanting to pay Jalen Redmond? So what does that look like? Two-tone, re-sign him. Absolutely. Not resign him, but re-sign him, right? We want to make sure that we re-sign him. We want to see. We want to see. Yeah, Brev says, I think Taki's probably gone to cut downs. That happened to him last year. He ended up coming back to us now. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. That's another position, again, where even though we don't have Hargrave, we don't have Jonathan Allen, because we drafted 2 guys this year, we're, again, deep on the inside defensive line. Just because we're deep in that position, though, doesn't mean we're going to have the production that we need. So it'll be interesting and exciting to see how that battle takes place. Is Taki Taimani on the outs again? Elijah Williams, does he take another giant step forward, as we saw him really just kind of become a preseason star last year? He got a little bit of playing time last year in 2025, but again, just like Jalen Redmond had a little bit in 2024 and 2025 year was his breakout, could that be something that happens with Elijah Williams? Now, that doesn't mean that, we don't know what injuries are going to look like with Caleb Banks getting healthy and coming into that, and what that rotation is going to look like. Is he still going to get that many reps to really make that big push? We'll have to see for sure. But Elijah Williams, I really like him. I'm definitely keeping an eye on him. Now, moving into our third topic, because we have a little bit of a gap now before we get into training camp. So with the weeks that we have, August 1st, I think, is the first training camp day that we have. I don't have my tickets yet. I'm trying to decide when I'm going, but I will be at training camp. So look for some different videos and some takes from me on that. Possibly even doing some fan interviews while I'm there. But let's take a look at the roster. What you saw from minicamp, are there any moves that you think that we need to make pre-training camp? One of the moves that I've brought up, at least, and I know many of us have talked about, and Brev, I know you're going to say it too, but at edge, the depth there is a question. Brev and I are on the same page. Jadeveon Clowney, he's hanging out there. Is there an edge that we need to bring in? Is it in dire straits at our safety position? Is Jacoby Thomas making enough strides, or will he in training camp to be able to have a bigger role, or is Jay Ward or Theo Jackson stepping up? What are your thoughts on any moves in this little gap that we have leading up to
Hmm.
training camp? Do the Vikings make any moves, and if so, what position or who?
Yeah, I don't think that. So there, something I've learned is that uh, there's the outside perception, and sometimes that's accurate, and then there's what the team thinks and believes, and sometimes that can be accurate too, obviously, or sometimes not so. But those things don't always sync up. I don't think the Vikings look at their safety position and feel very much concern. Obviously, Metellus is your one at this point, and he's feeling good. Theo Jackson was getting most of the run with the ones alongside Metellus, and Jackson
Mhm.
was kind of your deep dude. He's just really long, right? He's like 6'2". So he looks great at free safety, at least in shorts and jerseys kind of thing. But I think Theo Jackson's a good player. I think at this point, Jacoby Thomas at best is your 4, because I think he's still behind Jay Ward. So Metellus, Jackson, Jay Ward, and Jacoby Thomas. And then even there, I mean, Taviar Thomas is going to be on the team. I know he's mostly here for specials, but
Mhm.
I actually think they feel pretty good about the secondary. And I think that, yeah, we got Clowney here. Yeah, no, Clowney's a good player, and he's such a presence too. Um, if there is a concern for the Vikings team as a whole, I mean, everyone's talking about quarterback, but that's kind of its own thing. Center, Blake Brendel, that'd be interesting. I did ask Phillips about Blake Brendel, but mostly in relation to like how do you replace like a 5-1 backup? Like how do you, just because if he does stick at your starting center, he was one backup player who could literally play any of the 5 positions.
Mhm.
And Phillips basically saying, well, we can't. Was more have to have a swing guard and a swing tackle, and it'd be a little more of a traditional setup. So center is kind of interesting.
Well,
Eh,
how did he look, or did you hear any talk about how Blake Brandel's offseason, how did he prepare this offseason to play more at center? Did he work with anyone specific in the offseason? Have you heard
mhm.
anything on that, or did he get any press time or questions on anything like that?
No, he wasn't. I snagged Elijah Williams with my chance to snag a player, and then he wasn't at the press conferences. I've spoken to him in the past. Really nice guy. Um, he did have the one mistake that I noticed from him just from watching the team period was was he had a false start,
Hmm.
right? And so a bit of a mental error. When you're the only one who gets going and all the other 4 offensive linemen stay in their stances, that means the center get the snap count wrong. So Brendel did have a moment, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay.
Uh, and so that is a thing. But what I will say, he's a sharp dude, and he works, right. I mean, he's a college offensive tackle who then was a swing tackle, who then kicked inside so he could start, who then got demoted in favor of Donovan Jackson, who's now then switched to center, partly on necessity, partly because it's the opportunity. The good thing, though, is that he's fully capable of speaking on behalf of the offensive line. Like he's been with Kevin O'Connell the entire Kevin O'Connell era, right? So it is a complex scheme. There's a lot going on, but he's at a point where he can do it from at least like a work ethic and mental standpoint. Whether or not he's actually the best center in town, I don't know if anybody believes that. I think Dustin has written about this on VT, and others have noted this as well. I do wonder about Garrett Bradbury with Chicago, because they drafted the young fella in the second, right? And so I just wonder if Bradbury shakes loose at some point, and maybe it's kind of one of those ones you don't realize what you
Hmm.
got till it's gone. Um, and so I wonder there a little bit, and then the front 7. I do wonder about the front 7 with Banks being injured.
Yep.
Jalen Redmond is a total stud. Like he's really good. And I asked Flores about him, and it's all these answers are reasonably political or whatever, but like and polished. But again, like there is some pretty legit belief in Jalen Redmond, in the because it's basically 2 years to
Yeah.
the day, because he had a summer tryout that he then turned into an undrafted contract, then 53-man roster, and even in the 53-man roster, he actually got sent to the practice squad for a portion of 2024. And so any team, 31 teams could have scooped him up, could have stolen him away. Like the Vikings didn't even realize what they had, right? And then and then he got back on the roster and, did reasonably well at the end of 24. And then he had a really nice 2025. So Redmond, I think, is your sure thing. And then Van Ginkel, I was able to so with Van Ginkel is, are you going to have to pin your ears back and pass rush more? Everyone's talking about Dallas Turner taking the Grenard role, and that's fine. I get that there's a one-to-one connection there. But last year, Van Ginkel didn't rush the passer nearly as much. If you just look at the numbers of pass, and part of that was due to being injured and missing some games. But even from within the games he played, he wasn't tasked with pinning his ears back with the same degree of consistency as back in 2024. But he was still really good when he was allowed to. So all that to say that I don't know if the front seven will be what the front seven was a year or two ago.
And I think
they could be great. But
and I think that's the biggest question. You bring it up, and that's the biggest question that I have. Obviously for this team, that also has to do with the secondary, because if our front seven is not providing the type of pressure that we did even last year, our secondary has to be even better. Now in those last handful of games, last half of the season, we only allowed one passing touchdown. Can we do that again with not having the type of pressure? Probably not. That was a great stat last year, but this defense is, I know Brian Flores is creative. He's going to try to find ways to make sure that he's still getting that pressure. He's getting the results on the field. So I'm sure that he's going to be working on ways to try to figure that out. But obviously, until we see it on the field and we actually see it happen, that's going to be a question to be answered. Are we going to get the push that we need on the inside defensive line with the new guys on there? Caleb Banks being healthy and on the edge, can Dallas Turner handle that bigger workload without a Jonathan Grenard, who obviously was a really good pass rusher, providing a lot of pressure from that position? So is he ready to take on that reins as the edge one, if you will? And can Van Ginkel stay healthy? So those are all questions. And then that back end secondary, especially with the safety position, do they have to step up their game, because maybe they're going to have to cover for a little bit longer than what they were even last year?
I do think the secondary is better. James Pierre, and I don't mean this in any disrespect, but he's better than Jeff Okudah. And I realize that a lot of that with Okudah is injury. Like, James Pierre is a good player. Likewise, I think Theo Jackson can bounce back. Josh Metellus can bounce back. Byron Murphy was snake bitten for a bit as it relates to the interceptions, right? So, like, boys, there's some meat on the bone here. Like, there's a little bit of a room in that secondary to take a pretty good step forward. And then if a couple dominoes fall in the front seven, then they're going to be okay. Flores, he's pretty good. He's a good coach. So he's an intense guy, pretty sophisticated, pretty intense, pretty competitive. I think he'll figure it out.
All right. Well, I know we're running a little bit short on time, and I know that you got to get going here too. So I just want to, say thank you. Thanks for joining us, Kyle. And those of you out there, if you're not already following Kyle, please make sure that you're following him. At Vikings Gazette is where you can follow him. And if you want to read what Kyle's writing, go ahead and go to purpleptsd.com or vikingsterritory.com. Check out what Kyle's putting out there. Stay tuned for any more Vikings news that we have here coming up right after Kyle leaves. We're not done with the show yet, but Kyle, any last words that you have for our followers and guests online that are watching?
No, I appreciate everybody's time. I send my best from Canada.
All right. Well, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it, and look to have you on again soon in the future.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Steve. See you, everyone.
You bet. All right, guys, I have a new segment for you. Obviously, we have great guests every week. Kyle's one of the best and great writer out there, so make sure that you guys are following him. Now, this new segment I have, give me your honest feedback, but I got to say, I was right. I was driving back from Minneapolis from a Twins game, and my wife had never seen this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this into a segment. So here goes nothing.
And so I cry sometimes when I'm lying in bed just to get it all out what's in my head.
All right, guys. So that's my new segment is what's going on in the NFL. So kind of a funny meme or intro to that, but hey, what's going on? So, all right, what's going on in the NFL, right? So there's some different news out there that we could cover as far as NFL. There's some different things out there as far as whether or not Micah Parsons that's Vikings related because we have to play the Packers in week 1, right? So is Micah Parsons going to be ready for week 1? Probably not, but Tucker Kraft sounds like he will be. He might be on a snap count, but the Vikings are going to possibly have to face Tucker Kraft in that week 1 game. So that's something to watch on those two different injuries that the Packers have in the NFC North. Obviously, we have heard about the issues that the Lions have had on the offensive line, some different changes and stuff, watching how that transpires through training camp, but also the Browns. The Vikings aren't the only ones with quarterback, who's going to start, right? The Browns, is Shadur Sanders going to win that Browns job, or is it going to be Deshaun Watson coming back who's now healthy to win that job as well, too? It'll be interesting. We don't know if Aaron Donald is going to come back and play for the Rams now that Myles Garrett's there. Kind of the stars are aligning for the Rams where they look like they're going to be, the team to beat maybe in the NFC. Aaron Donald could come back and play with Myles Garrett. That's just kind of crazy and wild to think about, but that absolutely may happen. So we don't know, but yeah, uh, Aaron Donald, just a beast of a man. You've seen him work out. So Jared Verse ends up going over to the Browns. So they did lose Jared Verse, who's a younger stud, but they get Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett obviously is a beast of a man at the edge position. He is a little bit older, but they gave up a lot to go get him, and they're going to try to make a run. AJ Brown goes to the Patriots. All the stuff that he was doing with the Eagles, maybe that was to try to find a new home. He finds that with the Patriots. That means Drake May gets a new wide receiver weapon in AJ Brown. Obviously that if we're talking fantasy football and stock up, stock down, AJ Brown stock goes up. He's going to get some more usage with the Patriots than he did with a running focused team like the Eagles. So AJ Brown, that's a boost to his stock for sure. Whether it be stat wise, whether it be fantasy football wise, that's definitely a stock risen to him. George Pickens with the Cowboys. There was trade speculation of George Pickens getting traded, but he was at minicamp. Uh, he's talked about not holding out for the Cowboys. So, what do they do? Do they end up trying to sign him to a long-term deal and kind of do what the Bengals did? We've talked about with the Vikings on whether or not we should re-sign Addison and sign him to a big contract. So Bengals did it with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Cowboys, do they look to do the same thing with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb? We'll see, and we'll see if that works out for them. I mean, the Cowboys haven't been a meaningful franchise for a long, long time. They may have a better defense with a really potent offense this year. They've made some different changes throughout last year, and that could be an NFC team that could be a budding playoff team this year in the Dallas Cowboys. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Brev says that was a throwback. I know. I grew up with that when I was a kid, and Edwin Curtis says that's so painful to watch. I can't look away. I thought it'd be funny. I definitely did. He-Man as 4 non-blondes. Yeah, it's definitely funny stuff. McVay specifically got Garrett to bring Donald back. It might work. It absolutely might work. They're making a run, and does Aaron Donald want to be part of one more? They still have Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua on offense. Kyron Williams is a really good running back. That Rams team is definitely built to win. And yeah, right. And I think everybody was saying it, Norris. They were when Myles Garrett got traded. They're like, "Hey, what's going on?" But yeah, that's. Let me know what you guys think. This is just something outside of the Vikings, a new segment that I plan on doing, and it was more trying to bring some fun to the podcast at the same time while also giving you some news outside of the Vikings. But yeah, absolutely. So, hey, what's going on is that new segment. All right, guys, we're going to get into it here in just a second, but the Electric Signature Football Giveaway coming up here for the card break. Make sure you start to get your teams in now. And what we're looking for is give me one NFL team and one college team. Once someone selects that team, you can no longer pick that team. So go ahead, put that in your chat. So if you want Vikings and Florida Gators, go ahead and put that in chat. You get one NFL team, one college team. Can't pick one that someone else has already picked. So go ahead and put that on X or put that in YouTube so I can see that. And away we go. All right. So while you guys are making your picks and your selections before we do the card giveaway, we've had a couple winners with this already. A couple things I want to cover as well. And that first one being, again, guys, keep sending and forwarding this out to your friends. We are so close. We have probably 85 more subscribers to go before we do this Jordan Addison autograph jersey giveaway. I have more giveaways to do this year, but this is our very first one goal to meet before I do my very first giveaway for a jersey or helmet. That's kind of a hint of what's coming. So make sure that you're forwarding this, sharing it, encouraging some of your other Viking fans that you know to go ahead and become a subscriber here at Vikings Playbook on YouTube. So that's how you can win, is by being a subscriber. The other thing is, hey, we're getting closer to fantasy football season, so make sure that you're following us on fantasy football, fantasy15football.com. So pretty soon we're going to have that 2026 cheat sheet for you for fantasy football, where we have a pretty good indication of where we're going to have all of our players for 2026. So we're getting closer to rolling that out. So it's exciting. Go check that out. We got the fantasy fan chat as well too on there, where you can collaborate with other fantasy football owners, start your own leagues, ask questions on sit, start, trade, and then of course we have our podcasts that will be coming up weekly as we get closer to the season as well too. All right, so I'm seeing some teams out there. I'm seeing Northfield with Notre Dame, and the Texans. Okay, that's a different combination. I see Indiana and Houston. So the Houston Texans have already been taken. Irwin, so I need you to pick a different pro team. So I think you were trying to go Indiana, University of Indiana, Houston Texans, but the Texans are off the board. So go ahead and pick a different NFL team. So you have Indiana. I just need a different NFL team. Bob Swede went Gophers and Vikes, so Vikings are off the board and the Gophers are off the board. Indiana and the Miami Dolphins. Okay, Indiana and the Miami Dolphins. Anyone else? Barber Fade Up. It says, I loved He-Man as a kid growing up. Me too, Barber. I grew up with that, man. Barber, Vikings are already off the board. You got Georgia, but I need a different NFL team. SKOL State of Mind. Hey, what's up, D Woods? D, if you want in on this, go ahead and pick an NFL team and a college team that has not been picked. You could win on this card break. Barber Fade, you picked Vikings, which are already off the board, so I need a different NFL team. You got Georgia. Georgia's yours. I need a different NFL team from you. But D Woods, you can go ahead and get on this too. Just make sure you pick an NFL team and a college team that has not been picked. So one more time, Indiana, Gophers, Notre Dame are all off the board. Georgia's off the board. For pro teams, the Texans are off the board. The Vikings are off the board. The Dolphins are off the board. Bob Swede. So, Bob, you don't have to pick a different NFL team. You were good. Barber Fade. I need a different one from you. I'll give you a couple seconds here before we go ahead and do this, Rip Barber. I need a different NFL team from you. You got Georgia. I just need a different NFL team from you. All right, guys. Before I do this rip, next Tuesday here coming up, I'm actually going to have a special guest on with me this Tuesday. I will go ahead and I'll put out the announcement here coming up, but I'm actually going to have Ben Thies from SKOL Marketing with me. He's got some really cool things that they're doing at SKOL Marketing, and how he's also partnering with some of our Vikings legends. And I think that's going to be a really cool podcast. Obviously, we're going to top Vikings, but we're also going to talk some of the things that they're doing out at SKOL Marketing. So Ben Thies, he's the CEO over there at SKOL Marketing, and I think that's going to be a really cool podcast. They were also the ones that allowed me to use their studios when I did that in-person interview with Chuck Foreman. So I'm excited to have Ben on and share a podcast with him as well too. So make sure that you're tuning in Tuesday with us. I don't see anything from you, Barber Fade Up. So unless I get it before I rip, I gotta go ahead and just give you Georgia, because the Vikings are off the board. All right, here we go. Eclectic. Here we go. Doing the rip. Again, if you pick the team, Barber Fade Up, he comes up with the Saints. All right. You got Saints and Georgia, Barber Fade Up. Oh, man. And nobody picked them today. We got Tennessee with Dylan Sampson on the mythical 1 of 1 pre-production proof Dylan Sampson, Tennessee. Nobody picked Tennessee. So Dylan Sampson, unfortunately, we don't have a winner this time, but on the mythical Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. All right, guys, that's all I have for this week. Again, catch me next Tuesday. I can't put it out there quite yet, but I am working on a pretty big guest here coming up for another episode of Vikings Playbook here in the future. So once I have that locked in, I'm excited to share that one with you as well too. And until next time, guys, SKOL Vikings, and your Sunday starts here every Saturday at 9 p.m. CST. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to 250, get that Jordan Addison autographed jersey giveaway. And thanks again, everyone. Appreciate the support. SKOL Vikings.